Welcome back to my Battle Brothers tips section. I think this will be the last episode. This is going to be just talking about the endgame situations. I think there's really 4 of them that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I'll just give a quick tips and tricks summary of things that I wish I had known prior to doing those events. So I think the easiest by far end event is going after the Goblin City. The big thing when you're doing that is when you find the area with the Goblin City, there's going to be several Goblin strongholds around it. Make sure that you end up going to the Goblin City first. It won't activate the combat event with the Goblin City, but it will activate an event where you will meet a Goblin Slayer, and he'll ask you, do you want to destroy settlements or do you want to destroy 10 raiding parties? It's going to take you a lot of days to find 10 different raiding parties for the orcs or the goblins, so I highly recommend that you just go to the city, activate the event, say you want to do the strongholds, and then clear out the goblin strongholds that'll be immediately around it. There'll easily be at least 3 or 4 goblin strongholds around the Goblin City, and then you can complete all those events within a couple of days, and then you could go straight to doing the Goblin City. I had cleared out a lot of the strongholds prior to doing the city because I thought, well, maybe if I do that it'll make it easier, because I didn't know if those gate houses were gonna contribute to the difficulty of the Goblin City. They're just totally separate strongholds, so definitely do it that way if you want to expedite the way to sorry, I had to sneeze. If you want to expedite the way to get to complete that final objective, because it does give you some famed items and a bunch of equipment. Now, when you go there, you'll fight a bunch of goblins. It'll be kind of a mixture of their bowmen, shaman, the overseers, wolf riders, the skirmishers, so they're going to have a bunch of different versions of the goblins coming at you. The annoying thing is that I think there's 3 shamans if I remember correctly, and so that's 3 different guys that can be used to root your guys into place. So I think using the archers is definitely the easiest way to go, especially if you have high tier archers. You have 3 or 4 of them in there, and then you just have melee guys go around those archers to protect them from the wolf riders and melee guys that come in there. Then you can just easily snipe all the goblins around you, and if you actually get enough kills, you can end up breaking their morale, and then the goblin warriors will start retreating from the battle, because literally the Goblin City is just like a 30 or 40 goblin unit army that attacks you, so there's not a lot of special stuff that goes on there. If you're trying to trigger the panic earlier, taking down those shaman, taking down the overseers, that'll stop them from being able to rally the morale to the surrounding goblin units. I think definitely using the second wind potions would help you, because you get additional fatigue, because when you're fighting all those guys, your guys will gas out, especially when you're trying to get towards the end of the battle. If you're not able to just snipe the shaman from range, you're going to need to be spending a lot of fatigue breaking out of the vines to help you survive longer. And then by sniping, the big thing is you just got to make sure that you don't have those goblin wolf riders sneak up on your archers and lock them down and stop them from getting in there, because then you have to kill both the wolf and then the rider himself, so that's a lot of turns where you can end up getting guys locked down. But that's kind of the easiest way to do that map. If you do have melee guys that have shields, giving them the kite shields will help, because that'll give you additional range bonus, because there are quite a few of goblin ranged units that will be attacking you when you're doing that. It's really not that difficult of a battle, I would say. The other thing I'd mention is the map when you fight that is random. So if you find a map that you don't like, you could always just reload your game and then get one that's more beneficial for you. Like I said, I don't expect that you'd really have to try to cheese that battle that much, because it's not that difficult of a battle. It's definitely the easiest of the final endgame battles. But those I think are the easiest way. A couple of shields, couple of frontliners, a bunch of archers to just snipe everybody at range. Make sure you have lots of quivers. I definitely think the bows are way better than the crossbow at this, because you want to get as many shots as you can, and so this may be actually one of the rare situations where it may be beneficial to have 3 sets of quivers instead of 2 on your archers, because you could potentially go through all of your arrows depending on the situation and how well your front line holds up. I don't really recall there being difficulty with morale on that battle, so I don't know if you necessarily have to use the lion heart, but potions to help get additional support. And then you will have a lot of guys get netted. You will want to spend the fatigue to break out under the nets because you need to keep your guys alive because you'll be going through so many, and those increased damage percentages for them to be able to hit you because of the debuffs that occur with the netting definitely stack up over time, so just be very cautious with that. And then if you bring your Bannerman out, just make sure you're cautious with him not getting sniped. They do have a lot of those goblin poisons, so that can be real annoying. And then the big thing is just be careful that you are breaking guys out of vines occasionally, because the shaman, if everybody's in the vines, then they'll start using their Cloud of Flies ability, and that debuffs your hit chance both in melee and range, so that really starts to screw you up if that starts to occur. So pretty much how I'd prioritize is if you can take out a shaman, take out a shaman. Then I'd take out the wolf riders just to make sure they don't close the distance on your archers. Then taking out the skirmishers, anybody with the goblin pikes, because they can rapidly catch up with you. Just make sure when your guys are netted you break out, so that way they don't just knife you down with the puncture, because that can rapidly do a bunch of HP damage. And then try to just pace yourselves, because you're likely going to get hit with that goblin poison, which is going to reduce your AP, and that's definitely going to slow you down. So definitely kind of frustrating, but should not be a very difficult mission to complete. Alright, another legendary location that you would do would be the Witch Hut. I guess now that I think about it, this one's probably easier than the Goblin City. I think it was just a little more challenging for me because I went there way too early in the game. I mean, I was able to beat it without too much difficulty, but I suppose this one would probably be the easiest out of all of them. What it is, you find a hut in the middle of the woods, and you find a hag there, and she wants to form a pact with you. At the end of the event, you get an obsidian dagger, which is actually a pretty good dagger that allows you to kill humans, and then they get resurrected as zombies afterwards. Now the big thing is when you resurrect them, you know, they'll usually aggro other enemies to attack them instead of your guys, which is nice, but then it can destroy their equipment. So just make sure you don't use the last attack and get a kill with that dagger on anybody that has equipment that you might want, or you'd lose it. But it's usually a pretty easy way to win this mission is to just have several archers with you as well. And what you can do is you can use their aim shot to snipe down the hags, and it takes, I think, 2 arrows to usually kill them unless you get a crit, in which case you might be able to one-shot them, especially if you have really good bows, but for the most part it's going to be 2 shots. The big thing though is the hags will be a little bit faster than you most likely, unless you've put some points into initiative, so just be careful with the archers on that first turn when they're moving towards you, that they're not right next to the guys that are likely going to get captured, or charmed I should say, by the hags, because if they're charmed and turned towards your direction to attack you, then that counts as the archer being in the zone of control of that unit, and then it won't be able to fire. So it may make sense for you to have your archers kind of strategically placed. But if you're able to kill the 3 or 4 hags that are in there, I think is what they were, then the rest of the guys are a bunch of beasts. So you just have your guys kind of melee guys spaced out to be able to run interference against the beast. Once the hags are taken out, then you can easily mop up the rest of the forces. The big thing is once the guys are charmed, just make sure you don't move anybody in and out of their zone of control, otherwise they're going to be locked down and may suffer an attack of opportunity. And then because your guys are likely going to be better than anything the AI has, just make sure you don't have anybody that's about to die next to them. If so, then you'll need to do like a shield wall or something like that. But really there's not a ton of strategy. This one, just snipe down the hags and then mop up the rest of the guys. Sorry, if you let the match go out too far and you've already had guys charmed, then they may put a hex on one of your units, and that's probably the one way you could get screwed up by this. Is what happens with the hex is you'll see this little icon go over one of your units, or more commonly the hags will use it when you're doing the mission where the mayor or somebody has formed a pact with the hags and you got to protect his firstborn child. But any damage that you do to the hags HP will then be reflected back onto the unit that has a hex on it. So if it's a guy that has a ton of HP, it's not the end of the world, but they typically do it on guys that have low HP. So then you have to wait and cycle through turns until the hex wears off. because you don't want to inadvertently kill your own guys. And in the meantime, they may charm somebody else, and then you're suffering damage from those charmed units while you're waiting for the Hex because you can't kill them. Now again, if that happens, you just focus fire on the beasts that are going to be running around the map anyways. But just be careful you don't inadvertently kill your own units, especially if you're playing on Iron Man mode and you haven't fought a lot of Hags before, because that is a potential area where this could go haywire. The other areas, obviously, with the dire wolves or whatever else is in the beast compositions for the witch hunt, that they break through your front lines or lock down your archers, and then they won't be able to snag down the Hags as well, because it typically takes a little bit of several turns to close the distance with the Hags with melee units, and in that time they're either getting charmed or hexed, and then you're not able even to attack anyways. So that's the easy way to beat the witch's hut and get that obsidian dagger. And then what I go for next is go to the Sunken Library. And the reason for that is, it's not a super challenging battle. It's just when I did it, I had my guys just totally equipped poorly for the event. And what it is you're going to be fighting a bunch of armored guards. There's going to be 3 very high DPS zombies that are going to be there, and then there's going to be a prophet that gets to double cast his abilities, whether it be the miasma, which will just do damage to your guys every turn, or he'll start stunning your guys. The big thing is, because you're going to be fighting a lot of heavily armored undead. You're going to want to have two-handed maces, really good axes, polearms, something that's going to be good against heavily armored guys, even those berserker cleavers, and that would make this mission very, very easy. Because you kill all the guys, you can then surround the prophet, you can start attacking the prophet, and you can also send your other guys out to explore the map, and you can get them put down around the phylacteries, because once you take out the other enemies, and if you do it really quick, then as long as you don't damage a phylactery, he won't start summoning the skulls until turn 7, because there's several phases to this battle. First phase is just a straight up battle where the zombies and the armored undead are coming to attack you, and 3 or 4 of them will stay around the prophet to try to act as his personal bodyguard. So as long as it's a little bit RNG about how far back the prophet will stay from you, but if he stays further back, then that's 3 or 4 of those undead heavily armored guards that won't be attacking you, so you can easily overwhelm the ones that come out after you and then take him out. What I would recommend is, if you're really overpowered and just can easily kill all the guys, then just do that. But it may be beneficial to you to spend a couple turns to actually break the undead shields. They don't have a lot of durability, and then what happens at the 3rd phase is he'll resurrect everybody that you killed, and so if you've already broken their shields, then you don't have to worry about breaking through their shields a second time if they're resurrected. Now when you're moving your guys around to find the phylacteries, I should say, and if you do destroy one of the phylacteries, even if it's only one, then that'll summon the 2nd phase, where they'll start summoning these skulls after you every turn. Now they're 1 shot, 1 kill, and you can use them strategically to put them next to other phylacteries, because they'll just, kamikaze into your guys at range of 1. And you can use that to help you kill additional phylacteries if you don't have ranged guys that can take out the jars on the elevated position, or on the 3rd phase, when he starts summoning the ghost versions of himself, you can have your guy standing right next to the ghost versions, and then when they blow up next to you, it'll kill the ghost next to you, because it's only 1 hit to kill the ghost next to you, and that'll help prevent them from using their AoE attack, where they do just a 1 square vertical line down the map, where the following turn they use a lightning bolt that only damages you. It doesn't damage their own guys, so just be aware of that. And I don't think additional ghost prophets get summoned. However, they can those ghost guys can resurrect additional units, a couple of units every turn, so definitely want to make sure you take them out to prevent that AoE, and then also the resurrection of a different zombies. You can make the battle exceptionally easy if you can rapidly get the kill and then position your guys on the map, so the phylacteries that are on the ground, you can have melee guys next to them and only take 1 melee attack to break it, and then you could have archers on there to move around the map to go next to the ones that are at an elevated position. The thing you need to realize is the phylacteries have an range damage protection, so it'll take like 4 or 5 arrows to break a phylactery, and that's way too long, because you need to be able to go as fast as possible. So you can cheese that by using the throwing axes, because only one throwing axe has to hit a phylactery for it to be destroyed. So that's the first way you can do it. The second way is you would just have your melee guys next to all the ground phylacteries, kill it, and then the next turn it'll summon the third phase, and then it'll automatically shift the phylacteries that were at an elevated position down to the ground level, and then everybody else can run in there and kill it. The dogs will kill phylacteries as well, so just be very careful, because when I was doing it, that's actually what happened to me. Is for whatever reason the Hound, instead of going and attacking everybody else, just ran over to a phylactery and killed it, and then it triggered the next phase, which I wasn't quite ready for, and just kind of made some things spiral out of control and forced me to do some things a little earlier than ideally I would have liked. The other thing is, as long as you have a little bit of turns, if you can move everybody to position, you can also then use the recover function to restore the morale, the fatigue, prior to triggering the next event, because then all of a sudden everybody's going to start getting resurrected at the spot where they died. So if you have your guys pushed a little way around, it'll also stop them from resurrecting right on top of you. So that would be another thing I'd have to give you information for. If you do kill the prophet before you kill all the phylacteries, he just resurrects. So there's no reason for you to spend all that time trying to damage him over and over again, because he has decent amount of armor and HP. However, you can hit him repeatedly and get him down to like 1 health prior to triggering the last event, because once you've taken out all the phylacteries and you kill him, he doesn't resurrect anymore. So that allows you to bypass that whole situation pretty easily. And if you actually time it where you can take out all the phylacteries on the same turn and then land an attack to get the kill, you actually bypass the whole last phase of the battle, because I don't think he actually resurrects anybody. I'm not sure if the ghost versions of him would still spawn or not, but I think it would prevent the resurrection of the zombies and the armed warriors again. The big thing to realize, though, is when the zombies get resurrected, it's like they're brand new. So not only do you have to kill them once, like you would any other unit, but it'll then respawn again, and you'd have to kill them another time, because every zombie can resurrect at least once. So just be aware, so don't like leave some wounded guys over there thinking, oh, he's good, and then they resurrect on top of you and end up killing your units. But that's what I would recommend. So definitely don't fall victim to that, and then just definitely make sure you have a good Bannerman out there so he can repair the morale, because after having multiple debuffs by the Prophet and the Miasma and everything else, you are likely going to have some morale issues unless you have guys that have quite good morale. And then the archers can be helpful to just help you get into position and then throw those battle axes to take out the elevated phylacteries. And then late game, once you start summoning all those skulls, then they can sit back with their bow and one-shot the skulls to help protect you from damage there. So that's what I'd recommend for the Sunken Library. Just make sure you have really good weapons to take out heavily armored units, and it really shouldn't be that difficult. The other thing I'd mention is it may make sense for you to have the second wind potions to get the increased fatigue, since it is going to be a longer match potentially, and also to get the resolve potions to help prevent any morale breaking, because you'd ideally not want your guys freaking out, because you want everybody doing damage as fast as possible, because it really is a race to see who can kill who first, because if you let it drag out, you're going to lose even if you have really good guys. The next end location would be the Kraken. Now, this is also a place, it's Stone Pillars, I think, is the event where it triggers. The big thing is before you activate the Stone Pillars, make sure you have discovered a location where some Necrosaints would be, because you're going to need those Shimmering Ashes to be able to summon the Kraken. And also make sure you've sold any ashes that are already in your inventory, and make sure you don't have any Ungal hides in your inventory when you go to activate the event. So you don't worry when you first see the Sunken Pillars, just go there and start the event anyways. What you have to do is to actually, before you can even do anything there, is I think you have to fight a battle against Ungals, where after you kill them, it's like, what the hell's going on with these Ungals? It looks like something had damaged them, or you found like this big tooth or something in them. That's how you know the Kraken is now going to be able to be, that quest is going to be activated. So once that happens, then you go to the Stone Pillars. Like I said, make sure you don't have any Simmering Ashes or Ungal hides in your inventory, because what the game's going to do is it's then going to look at your inventory and say, we're going to add 3 or 4 to whatever, how many number you have in your inventory. So for me, I had like 8 of them in my inventory already. So it's like, hey, congratulations, now you have to have 11 before we'll activate the next step. So you're like, shit, now I've got 11 of my inventory spaces filled, and it took me, 90 turns to be able to find some Necrosavants. Well, maybe not 90, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was a lot. It was definitely 60 plus days, because I had cleared out all the strongholds that had the Necrosavants prior to doing that. And Necrosavants are one of the few units that are probably the most difficult for them to respawn in. And they're also strong enough where they rarely leave a stronghold. So if you've discovered a couple of Necrosavant locations, just leave them alone. And then when you, after you get to the point where you're ready to use them, just run over there, kill them, and then you can activate the Kraken battle. But like I said, it's 2 phases. So the first phase is to act, before you even get to go to the battle, is you see there, you meet the crazy witch lady. She's like, I need Ungal hides. So then as long as you don't have any in your inventory, it's like, get 3 or 4 Ungal hides and come back to me. So then you go out, find some Ungals, kill them, get the hides, come back to her, and she's like, oh, okay, sounds good. Now I need these ashes. So then it's like, go find 3 or 4 ashes, and you have to go back out there, and then you find the Necrosavants, you kill them, you get the 3 or 4 ashes, then you go back to see her again. That time it'll start the Kraken battle. Now the Kraken battle I thought was probably, I personally struggled more with the Kraken battle than I did with the other locations, including the back Monolith, because I tried to do it the traditional way, and it's just a stupidly frustrating mechanic for this battle. What happens is the Kraken will be half a screen away from you, and I think it has something like 2,000 armor, and I don't know, it must have probably somewhere between 3 and 8,000 HP. It's a lot. I'm guessing it's probably 4 to 6, but it's a lot of health. And I don't know if the health actually changes on the different difficulty settings. But you'll have 8 tentacles, and in phase 1, the tentacles will come running at you, and then it'll start randomly grabbing your characters. And then when those characters are grabbed, they can't act. So then whoever of the 8 guys, potentially up to 8 guys, can be grabbed every turn, and the remaining few guys that you have with you then have to run and use their melee attack rules to try to break the tentacles off. And when it does that, it does a little bit of damage to the tentacle, and then it frees the guy so they can have a turn. The problem is the higher initiative guys, if they get grabbed, then they can sometimes get pulled. And what happens if it becomes the tentacle's turn after, or it becomes your character's turn prior to you breaking the tentacle, then the tentacle will pull it 4 tiles closer to the Kraken. And it usually takes 2, maybe 3 pulls, and then it'll drop your guy in front of the Kraken, because if you get within 1 square of the Kraken, it's just an automatic kill. So then the Kraken's head on his turn will just automatically kill that unit. And the problem is it's done in the marsh, so even with the Pathfinder, you still are suffering pretty heavy fatigue and movement penalties, and then you're spending a bunch of fatigue just every turn breaking guys out of the tentacle holds. So you do that, and you just start killing the tentacles. Now, originally when you start killing the tentacles, it'll actually do like several hundred damage to the Kraken. Well, at least 100, I would say. I shouldn't say several hundred, because I don't know if that's true. And so you can rapidly kill those tentacles, and there's not like damage coming towards you. It's just a fatigue battle for the first phase until you get the Kraken down to half health. And then with it down to half health, it then activates phase 2, and that's where the tentacles now will not only have that grapple ability, but they also have an exceptionally powerful attack. And the attack can even take out tanks that have really high armor, so just be very cautious with that. And then you can then start killing tentacles where it'll drop down to 4, or I think 6, until the last phase where it drops down to 4, I think is how it works. And then when you kill a tentacle, it'll just randomly respawn on the map and then run back towards you. And there's no guarantee that you'll know that it'll grab you versus get an attack. And the attack, what happens is they hit really, really hard, and they tend to go after whoever has the lowest melee defense. So it may only take 3 or 4 attacks for them to kill one of your characters. It also triggers bleed, and you'll rapidly lose guys. And each time you kill a tentacle, it actually reduces the amount of damage that it does to the Kraken's head. So now you're in this spiral where you're trying to kill tentacles, keep your guys from being grasped, and then also try to keep your guys alive and not have the guys that are significantly injured get killed. if you have guys that are pretty wounded, you probably want to run them into the bushes, because if your guys are in the bushes, they're hiding, then the AI, unless it gets 1 square from them, won't know where those units are, and you can hide your significantly injured units there to keep them alive for the big battle, because this can be a long, drawn-out battle. But what happens when you're breaking them free from the tentacle grasp is there is RNG on it. So even if you have a guy that has 80-90 melee attack, which it should be, you know, you would think in your mind this is going to be a, you know, guaranteed break free, they can still just have a bad roll, and then your guys don't do it. It don't break free, and it only takes, you know, a couple of bad rolls before everybody's pulled into the bog water, and then you just have this fatigue issue, and then you end up losing the match. Because, you know, if you're trying to do this the official way, it probably takes 30 minutes to an hour to do the battle, and if you have guys that don't do great damage to the tentacles, you know, you may be talking about, you know, battles that take 50-60 turns before you get the kill. And I had done that, and I spent several hours doing that, and it was very redundant. When you're bringing guys out, you probably want to use weapons that you can get 2 attacks on that don't cause a lot of fatigue. So things like spears, swords, things like that will allow you to do good damage. I did have some AoE guys that allowed me to do good damage and really destroy a bunch of those tentacles. But the issue was then if I had an unlucky situation where they were fatigued out, then they wouldn't have the fatigue to either break free themselves or free somebody else. So I think typically slow and steady, if you're going to try to do it the traditional way, is the way to go. Obviously, given the fatigue and resolve potions would help, just like it would on anything. But what I actually did is I actually cheesed the battle myself. There's several ways of cheesing the battle when I was reading about this later. One is you just get all your guys naked, and as long as they have greater than 100 initiative, they should be able to go before the tentacles. You just run them into the bushes where they're hiding, and then you have one really strong tank, and you use him to aggro all the tentacles to the other side of the map from your guys, because it has about a vision of 8. So you just want to make sure that you can then take it and make sure you have all 8 tentacles with you, because if you move your guy too far away, then the remaining tentacles that may not see your tank that's in the open will then just hide in the bushes, and then when you send your naked guys that no longer have armor to move in with range 2 weapons to attack the Kraken head, they'll just sit there because those tentacles will stay aggroed onto your tank. And, you know, you don't have to worry about him attacking you. And if you give him the, I want to say it's the Goblin Trophy, then he's immune to being grasped. And so they can't use their grasping attack. So literally for the first phase of the attack, the match, you're spending your time positioning your guys to hide them in the weeds, and then you're sending your tank to the opposite end of the map to aggro those 8 tentacles. And so that's step 1 on the map, or the plan. And if you are going to try to do it the real way where you're destroying things, just make sure your highest initiative guy is the one that has the Goblin Trophy on, so then he'll be the one that can break free, and you'll just have to watch the queue for whose turn it is to try to break guys out in that order, to make sure they don't get grasped and pulled, because when they start to get pulled forward into the swamp waters where things start to get out of control. And then on the second phase, like I said, the tentacles are very dangerous, and they hit for a ton of damage, so they can still attack your tank. So if you have a tank that has that lone wolf trait, that's essential, because that'll increase his melee even farther. Now the tentacles are really bad at doing shield damage. I'd still recommend that you have 2 shields just to keep yourself safe in case they do for some reason break through your shield. But just sitting there with a low fatigue weapon, because your tank really shouldn't, it could attack, but it doesn't have to attack. Unless you want to try to weaken the tentacles down, so that way on the second phase, potentially if you hadn't killed any tentacles and you killed all the tentacles that are like 1 or 2 hits away from dying, it would rapidly do a ton of damage to the Kraken head. But I think it's just wiser, because it randomly will spawn those tentacles near your naked guys, and they'll get one-shotted by the tentacles unless they have a lot of health naturally. So I think it makes sense just to try to sacrifice your tank, or if he's a good enough tank, he can just sit there and tank all the hits without taking damage, because you use a shield wall, he'll be able to block a bunch of attacks and hopefully survive. And if he's far enough away from everybody else, it'll take the tentacles that remain a couple turns to come over to get you and start attacking the other guys. So hopefully in that time you'll have enough over there to do the attacks. Now if you have the guys with the Overwhelm ability, you know, obviously you'd pass your turn, but make sure the guys that have the Overwhelm ability attack first, so you could stack those Overwhelm charges onto the Kraken head, and then you'll smack them down with everybody else that's there. You'll obviously want some things that can do good damage against armor to get through those 2,000 points of armor damage, but you don't need to feel compelled to get pull arms and things like that, because as long as you're not doing damage to the Kraken head, it won't activate as the next phase until you get to halfway through his health. So, you know, I guess technically it's not even that essential that you have high armor piercing weapons, as long as you're not killing tentacles. That's going to cause you to activate things prematurely. And then you can just sit back and kill the tentacles kill the Kraken head without difficulty. So it is kind of a cheesy method. In my mind, I justify it by being like, oh, I'm going to fight this big monster. My guys are, you know, sending out a distraction force. And then once your tank has gone over there and started to get those tentacles away, everybody else just ambushes the Kraken head and gets the kill. Again, if you're willing to do a little cheese, then that's by far the easiest way to complete the Kraken and kind of turn it into a joke. There is a way to solo the Kraken if you have an exceptionally good tank. You can whip down or attack all the tentacles, get them close to 1 HP from getting killed, use a range 2 weapon or a whip to then attack the Kraken's head, have that guy have the Goblin Trophy, and then you literally just smack them until you activate phase 2, and then once phase 2 is done, you can spend a few turns attacking the head, and then you attack the tentacles that are around you, and then because you haven't killed any tentacles, that full HP damage will go towards the head, and that'll drop it down to be almost enough to kill it if you take out every tentacle. Or you just focus on the tentacles from there out and you can kill the head. So that would be an easy way to do it, but you have to guarantee that the brother that's there is a really, really good tank and very reliable damage dealer to be able to guarantee that he'll be able to do enough damage and have everybody set up in a way that guarantees that you've weakened those tentacles far enough that you can easily get some kills once they all aggro on you. So that's how I'd recommend going through the Kraken. The other thing you could try to do is if you send out your Hounds, the game sometimes has difficulty for the Kraken eating the Hounds. So if the animation gets triggered but the Hound doesn't actually die, it becomes like an immortal Hound, and it'll just sit there and do dog bites to the Kraken head for the whole match, even though it's technically dead. Now it won't do a ton of damage, but it may actually just allow you to have one space that should be filled with a body to stop your guys from getting eaten in that position. Again, that's some RNG about whether it's going to glitch out or not, so I wouldn't recommend relying on that technique. The other option is you start throwing the dogs around on the second phase. Sometimes the tentacles will focus their attack on the Hounds instead of your guys. So if you're in a situation where it's like, gosh, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it, throw a dog out there and let them kill the dog for a turn. That may give you the time to try to survive. Now, after you kill the Kraken, you'll get the sword blade, which doesn't do anything until you complete the next part of the quest, and then it doesn't actually use up those shimmering ashes that are in your inventory, so then you can sell them or you can use them to craft potions if that's something you're interested in, whatever the situation is. But once you get that blade, then you have to go to the Watermill. You probably have already discovered the Watermill on your exploration, but if not, you go there and you see an old guy and he'll talk about his son. So you go there with the blade and he's like, hey, you found my son's blade, I think you're worthy. And then you find out that he's a ghost, and it'll spawn another battle where I think you have to fight, I can't remember, it's him and several fallen heroes, let's just say that. Some of the fallen heroes are shield guys with one-handed weapons, other ones have the two-handed weapons, and again, just like every other match, the fallen heroes can, I think, resurrect at least one time. So what I recommend is that you just focus fire down the fallen heroes first and ignore the enemy unit that has the blade on there. Just be careful that you guys don't group together, because otherwise every time he gets the hit, he's going to start attacking you with that AoE attack. So if you have a good tank and you can just send him over to do one-on-one battle with the undead hero, because that sword isn't great at doing damage against shielded units. And then you can take out all the other fallen heroes. Then you kill them twice so they don't keep resurrecting. Then you just focus fire down the enemy hero, because what happens is once you kill him, it then summons in, I think, like 6 or 8 Geists, and then he becomes resurrected in a spectral form. So what you just want to make sure you don't summon all those Geists while you still have a full field of fallen heroes. Otherwise, the Geists are going to be breaking your morale. Your guys are going to have trouble killing the fallen heroes. They're going to start breaking, and then they're going to be running around and getting slaughtered. So that's by far the easiest way to win that battle. Potentially you could use those Lionheart potions on there to get the additional resolve to help you, but really if you do it this way, it should be a pretty easy battle, and then you'll get that sword. Really, any kind of equipment would help. Obviously, if you have higher armor stuff, that works out, but typically undead heroes, or fallen heroes I guess they're called, are not too hard to kill even with your bowmen and things, and especially if you start stacking some overwhelm shots on them, and then the bowmen can then take them out pretty easily once you've killed them and they get resurrected, because typically by that time they don't have a lot of armor, so the archers do good damage. And then my archers typically had Hounds, so then when all those Geists got summoned, you can release the Hounds, which can then start attacking the Geists as well, and either the Geists will focus fire on the Hounds, so that AoE debuff to morale will not hurt them, or they'll just kill the Hounds. Either way, and the Hounds have a good chance of killing the Geists as well, so that's definitely an easy way to beat that mission, and then you get the great sword. So definitely not a very difficult match. The Kraken is definitely the guy that's hardest to kill there. And then finally you move on to the Black Monolith, which is definitely a pretty frustrating matchup, but if you're set up correctly, which you should be by the end game, it's not super challenging. I lost a ton of guys when I did it, but that's because I had shit guys by my end game because I just had them built out wrong. What's quintessential to be able to successfully complete the Black Monolith is you need to have 1 or 2 exceptional tanks. And what you want to do is run your first tank up north, a little bit to the right side, so that way you can aggro all 3 of the priests and then a bunch of the ancient auxiliaries to start attacking him, and then you want to give him probably 2 shields. I had an exceptional fame shield that I thought was going to survive, but they broke through it, because if you drag it out, he's potentially going to be holding up like 10-15 guys, and it could be for, you know, I think for mine he held the ground for probably 15-20 turns, something like that, before they broke his shield. But you need to make sure the guy you send up there has good resolve, good defenses, so because once he starts to waver, everything gets out of control, because he is going to have to spend turns just shield walling continuously. Make sure that after you shield wall, you just hit F to end the turn, because what happens frequently on this match is guys' morale will start to break, and then if you just space to temporarily wait their turn and they're starting to break their morale, then they'll have a morale check twice and they may start running. So just make sure if you're sure their turn's over, you F out of there, so that way hopefully your Banner Lord the following turn can then use its rally ability and stop your guys from running around, because this is probably a match where your guys are going to start breaking unless you have really good resolve guys. But so you run your tank up there, and then if you have a second tank, you can run the second tank a little bit to the right side of the screen on the lower part, and then that can aggro a second group of those auxiliaries. They don't have to go too far, whereas the tank, you want to go north as far as you can to make sure those freaking priests don't come down and start spamming miasma and stunning your guys. You'll want the one up north to use the Undead Trophy to help him resist that Undead stun attack, and also give him additional checks for morale and fear. And then what's going to happen after the first turn, where all those undead auxiliaries come towards you, is then I think there's like 6 or 8 necro savants that then start flying in on top of you. So you'll want to for sure focus down the necro savants, because long term, if you leave them be, they're going to do a ton of damage because they hit hard, they take out HP, they cause bleed, so they're an absolute nightmare. So focus down those guys, and then try to take out the undead as well as you can once they slam into you. I typically recommend when you're fighting the undead to focus down on the cleavers, then taking out the guys with the scythes, because the cleavers and the scythe have AoE attacks. Then focus firing down the guys with the spears, because they have an increased 10% chance to hit your guys, which can definitely be terrible. And they definitely like to just line up and focus fire down one of your brothers at a time. So a little bit of, even though it's like one by themselves isn't bad, you know, you have 4 or 5 of them attacking a single unit, it stacks up pretty significantly. And then going after the shielded units. Now, ideally, or that's how you do it ideally, but realistically, you're not going to be able to do it that way. You're going to have to take out some of the shields because they're going to slam into that rank 1 position. You're going to be blocked in, and then you have to cut through those guys to get to the back line to take out those softer targets. But just be aware of that. Now, the Conqueror is the hero unit for the AI on this map. You can kill him at any time. He has quite a bit of armor. So if you do have somebody that has like those acid flasks, you could whip those into the large groups, because there's 47 enemies on this map. So if they start batching up, you can start throwing those acid flasks or blessed water. The thing that's pretty frustrating with the blessed water is it doesn't have a guaranteed splash. Again, it's a 33% chance that it splashes out there. But if you save those up or gone to the location where you pick those 3 flasks up, they can definitely be beneficial on there. Obviously, you don't care if the blessed water splashes on your guys because it won't do damage, but the acid vial certainly will do damage to your own armor, so just be very cautious with that. But it's also a very easy way for you to cheese the Conqueror, because you throw a couple of those on him, it does a shit ton of damage, and you can just rapidly chop him down and get the kill without difficulty. Make sure when you're doing this battle that you have things that are really good against heavily armored units. So you know you're talking about your 2-handed axes, your 2-handed maces, pole arms, barbarian cleavers, items like that that can really allow you to do a lot of stuff. And then just make sure you have a really good Bannerman so you can keep restoring your guys' morale to make sure they don't break. Obviously using the resolve potion as much as you can, and the second wind will be critical on this match, because you're going to be taking out 47 different guys. You can use dogs on this match. In fact, I really recommend it, especially once those Necro Savants start showing up, because if you throw some dogs down, not only can they potentially get the kill after you trigger the 9 lives, which is really nice when that happens, but the Necro Savants will always focus fire on them. Now, it only takes 1 or 2 attacks for the Necro Savants to kill them, but at least you kind of have an idea of where the Necro Savants are going to then spawn into, because they're typically faster than the Hounds, and you can use that to help you position guys to help focus fire down Savants, and then also to protect you from getting a round of attacks on there. So Necro Savants, then the armors, and then focusing down those priests before they start putting miasma all over your guys and stunning guys that don't have the undead trophy on, and then obviously just killing the Conqueror. Now, the one thing you got to be careful with is if you're waiting for the undead event during any of these matches, your characters will resurrect as zombies, and then you have to kill those guys too. So just be very cautious if the undead endgame event is occurring when you're fighting these endgame things, or because you could potentially have to kill your own characters again, which means you're going to be damaging their armor and everything else. There's no ranged units on the Kraken or the Undead, the Sunken Library, or the Black Monolith. So there's no reason for you to have shields that focus on additional range defense. It's going to be all melee defense for those guys. So those should be your priorities. And like I said, your tanks are probably going to need a couple of shields on this mission for sure. The one that runs north, the one that runs to the east on the bottom probably isn't going to need another shield, unless the shield you equip them is pretty crappy, because there really shouldn't be enough guys on that bottom that they're going to get the kill. But that's how I'd recommend beating that mission. If my tank up north was built out a little differently, and then his shield didn't break, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, and I would have easily beat that without having so many casualties, and I certainly could have beat that map without suffering as many casualties as I did. But I think you could potentially even do it with only 1 or 2 casualties, if any, if you have good brothers and you had your guys kitted out appropriately to kill them easily, because there's no resurrection or anything like that, and it's definitely really easy to beat this if your guys are set up appropriately. The other option against the Necrosavants is if you had like some duelists, you could end up throwing down those nets on top of the Necrosavants, because that'll stop them from warping away from you, and also increase your chances of hitting them. So that's something to take into consideration as well if you have a bunch of reinforced nets and guys that you have one-handed weapons on. So hopefully that helps you and gives you an idea of how to beat this endgame content here. Certainly clearing out the strongholds is a good way to get the famed weapons in the meantime, but make sure you have good brothers, and as long as that's the case and you have them set up to fight the kind of opponents you're going to be going against, the endgame content really isn't that hard, excluding the Kraken, but there's easy ways to cheese that battle to help you get past it without difficulty. So thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please give my channel a like and subscribe. Encourage me to post more content for you. Have a great day.